Today, we are going to wrap up this week's episodes by talking about a team filled with talent that just hasn't been able to figure things out yet. Talking about, as you probably read already, the Memphis Grizzlies, a team where it seems like every year they have one or two players that just break out and become one of the most exciting pieces in dynasty fantasy basketball, and then also they still have three all-star caliber players. Maybe not three because Desmond Bain hasn't made an all-star game, but three all-star caliber players, at least two, depending on how you feel about Desmond Bain. But I think he's an all-star talent. And then they added, Zach Edey with the number 9 pick, a bunch of other either solid veteran pieces or young upside guys that have the potential already have had the opportunity to contribute really solid value in fantasy that I think we're all just kind of trying to figure out how this thing's going to work. Are some of these pieces that we really like that haven't been able to carve out a consistent role for whatever reason? Are they going to be available for trade? Would Memphis be willing to move on from some of those guys? And how quickly can we get in on the action and get some of these guys rolling to use in our dynasty leagues? There's a lot of players that are just worth stashing on this roster, mostly in the hopes that they just get an opportunity elsewhere. But before we break things down for them, I just want to remind you guys that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. We've got baseball going on. We've got the NHL playoffs going on. And of course, the NBA playoffs. We're going to see tonight if New York can close this series out at home, or if Boston, without Jason Tatum, is going to be able to keep this thing alive. I mean, they're playing with nothing to lose at this point, playing with house money, however you want to say it. The pressure almost feels like it's more on New York. You either win tonight, close this thing out, or you have to head to Boston for game 7, having just lost 2 games in a row. That's not a situation you want to be in. Want to close things out at home. The Knicks are favored by 2.5. So if you feel strongly either way, BetOnline's a great place to bet on this game. And they have the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB to the NHL to UFC. And then in between the games, you can head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas style games. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. We're going to talk about Memphis, and it's a lot of moving pieces here. A lot of players that some of them, the numbers may not look as good this year because Memphis was finally, for the most part, healthy outside of John Morant, who only played 50 games. But the rest of this roster is pretty healthy, and they have a lot of young pieces that are going to help them build for the future, help them compete right now. It just feels like things just haven't gone Memphis's way. I mean, 48 wins, that's a pretty good team. That's the West. The standings were only divided up by a few games. So a couple, we don't want to blame everything on the refs, but like in the regular season, I'm sure there was 1 or 2 games where it was like the refs made an incorrect call, cost them a game here or there. A 50-win team was anywhere from a 3 to 5 seed in the West. A 48-win team was either 7 or 8 in the West, with Golden State and Memphis both winning 48 games. So you win 2 more games and you're potentially hosting a first-round series as opposed to heading out on the road to play the number 1 team in Oklahoma City. Pretty interesting the way that works out. Obviously, that wasn't a great matchup for Memphis, and they weren't able to even get a game. But they still have a lot of talent to be excited about. Just breaking down the way their situation works, they're going to be able to add 2 pieces, assuming they hold on to their picks. They have picks 48 and 56 this summer. Now, with most teams, you would say, okay, so what is that going to get them? Probably not much. But let's just look at the second-round picks that Memphis has made over the last couple of seasons. Last year, they drafted Jalen Wells, all-rookie first-team player. Year before that, G.G. Jackson slipped from being a potential lottery pick because he had a really bad season in South Carolina. Memphis took a chance on him, and he was awesome as a rookie. Was taking advantage of all the other injuries there. And then he had his own injury that delayed his start to this past season. Wasn't ever a consistent part of the rotation, especially by the time the playoffs roll around. But we know what type of talent he is, and he's still super young. Year before that, second round, Vince Williams. So, yeah, Memphis has a recent history of drafting well in the second round. Can they do it again? Is 3 or 4 years in a row drafting a nice piece in the second round? Is that too much to ask for? Maybe. So they have picks 48 and 56. They got Vince Williams at 47, Gigi Jackson at 45, so not too far off. We will see if they're able to do it again this year and add a nice piece in the second round. As far as so they don't have their first this year. Their first next year is involved in a swap. Have their own pick 2027 through 2029, potential swap in 2030, and then their own in 2031 and beyond. So Memphis definitely still has some pieces they can move if they want to. If they want to consolidate somehow, because like I said, they do have a lot of pieces. And the stars that they have, or whether it's their fault or not, haven't been able to get this team to where they think they can be and where I think that they're talented enough to get to. A lot of times that just happens. Like, there's outside factors. That's not saying that they're not good enough, because I don't think that's the case. Sometimes you're in a very stacked conference. Like I said, 2 games. I'm sure that there was 2 games during Memphis' season that you could blame on random outside occurrences, whether it be directly a referee missed a call late in the game, or a missed shot at the buzzer, or a made shot at the buzzer for the other team. I'm sure there was something there that it was like, okay, they probably could have been a 50-win team if 2 plays went their way. We'll say that. So they could have been. So let's say, this is the hypothetical game that you can play with every single team, which is fine, but if we're going to play it, Houston was a 2 seed at 52 wins. So 5 separate plays in 5 different games that changed the outcome of it. Potentially Memphis is a 53-win team and they're a 2 seed in the West. That's a scenario. It's possible. You can play that with every single team. So it's not necessarily fair, but it's the reality of the situation. So does Memphis say, okay, because I haven't really heard or seen Memphis in like trade talks as far as being interested in some of these stars. Maybe I'm just saying the wrong tweets, but I think that Memphis has the pieces to consolidate. And who that ends up being, I'm not sure yet. It could be that they're interested in a Giannis. It could be interested in a KD. Those seem to be the 2 stars that are most likely to be moved this summer. But it could be somebody else that we're not focused on right now that Memphis is has the pieces to trade for, because any number of firsts that they're willing to part with, if they're able to do that with a couple of their younger upside pieces, is it enough? Maybe not for Giannis, but is that enough to potentially bring in a different star that you could also keep Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson? That's possible, I think. I don't know what player that gets you, but if you're able to do that, that's a very, very competitive team there. We'll see what moves they are able to make, or maybe they aren't, or maybe they just run it back. Some teams just believe in their guys too much. Not too much, enough. So much. They believe in their guys so much that they'd rather just be patient. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. As far as the roster for next season, Marvin Bagley and Luke Kennard and Lamar Stevens are set to be unrestricted free agents. Senti Aldama and Yuki Kawamura and Cam Spencer are all set to be restricted free agents, with Kawamura and Spencer on 2-way deals. Most of the rest of the roster is still there. Jaren Jackson is going to be needing a new contract soon, but just looking at it, his current contract is such a bargain. I'm actually kind of confused looking at this number. You need to just go back and say that's actually okay. I probably should have looked at the specifics of this contract, but I just had the contract thing pulled up. He signed a 4-year, $104 million contract that it's about to expire next year, but it's descending. So next year he's gonna make $23 million. That's sorry. Now I'm getting off on my own tangent that I didn't prepare for. I gotta stick to a script or something. DeAndre Ayton, who went first in the draft that Jaren Jackson went fourth in, signed a larger contract. He's on a 4-year, $132 million. With the way that the contracts work, I don't remember this off the top of my head. I'm just pulling up the numbers just to look. But if there was some sort of DeAndre Ayton didn't make any sort of All NBA team or anything like that. Why'd you agree to that contract, Jaren Jackson? I hope you get paid a lot more next time. I think he deserves it. But anyways, a lot of their money is going to be tied up in Jaren Jackson Jr. as well as John Morant, Desmond Bane, who are on significantly larger contracts. But a lot of these other guys are on small contracts because that's how Memphis has been getting a lot of their talent. Like for next season, as far as who's under contract, outside of Morant getting 39, Bane getting 37, and Jaren Jackson getting 23, which is a large chunk of the cap space. But the rest of it is Brandon Clark at 12.5, and then next most is John Conchar at 6, Edie at 6, and then it's Vince Williams at 2.3, Scottie Pippen at 2.2, Gigi Jackson 2.2, Jalen Wells 2 or 1.95, whatever. Point is, a lot of these guys are on very, very team-friendly deals, which is great for Memphis for at least another season. I mean, Santi Aldama's on a restricted or is a restricted free agent, so I'm assuming they're going to want to bring him back. But how much does he fetch on an open market? We'll see. But they have a couple more seasons. Let's see if they just pick up these team options for guys like Vince Williams, Gigi Jackson, then they have them under contract at very low cost for at least 2 more years, and some of these guys up to 3 more years, such as Jay Huff, Scottie Pippen Jr., Jalen Wells, Zach Edey, very team-friendly deals. So they have like a nice bench to build with, and now it just feels like maybe they need to upgrade, get another star in here. It's going to be, looking at the cap situation now, it's probably going to be difficult to bring in a big star without matching salary. So maybe it would require a guy like Desmond Bane to be on the way out. But if you're able to upgrade from Desmond Bane, who's already, like I said, beginning, all-star level talent, if you're able to upgrade that, that's going to be a very dangerous team. Also, John Morant needing to be healthy. That's the other thing. John Morant played 50 games. Say he plays 60. I'd like to think that they would at least win 5 more games that they lost. Maybe it's 2 more games and they still go up the standings. Yeah. Anyways, I don't need to keep talking about hypotheticals because of the way the season happened. But it does, I guess, kind of illustrate the decision that management and the coaching staff needs to make is, do we really feel like, one, John Morant is going to have a healthy season, because that's been an issue, or 2, that they feel confident enough in this team that if they were to just run it back with, obviously, a new head coach, they fired Taylor Jenkins very late in the season, that with just running things back with this team, is that enough for them to get a couple extra wins, maybe be a 2 or 3 seed in the West? And which obviously, they were a 2 seed in the West a couple of years ago, lost the first round of the Lakers. So in a stacked Western Conference, home court advantage still matters, but we see these teams that either just get better in the second half of the season still end up in the play-in tournament because of how stacked the West is. And it's a team that you're like, okay, this is like a top 3 or 4 team in the conference, and we're having to play them first round, but it's just the way things work. But I still think it's something where it's a hypothetical or a possibility that Memphis could just be much better during the regular season next year. But do you feel confident in this team beating some of these other teams in the playoffs? I mean, they played OKC in the first round and got swept. Now, you could say John Morant got hurt game 3 with them up like 20, and he said that he had them figured out. I have to imagine they would have won game 3 if John Morant didn't get hurt. I don't think that they would have blown the 20-point lead that they did, but I'm not confident that Memphis would have won that series. But if it's just Morant's sentiment, or if it's something that's kind of shared by the entire team of, oh shoot, we actually would have won this thing had John not got hurt, I don't know if I believe it. But if management does, and they're like, no, we would have beat this team, well, let's just run things back. That's a hypothetical. It's a possibility. We'll see what they end up doing. I'm not sure if it's the right decision or not. But we'll talk about it. Talk about this team, now some of these players, how to value them in dynasty formats. John Morant, he probably not the most valuable. I mean, I would say not the most valuable in dynasty leagues on this team, but we're going to talk about him because he's kind of seen as the biggest star on the team. He is like the face of the franchise, I would say. His game doesn't translate super well to category leagues. His best season, he shot 49.3% from the floor and was a top 50 player. Basketball Monster had him at 48, but free throw percentage is below average. The turnovers are bad. Doesn't really get enough. Is a good passer, gets assists. I wouldn't say he gets enough assists to make up for the turnovers. Assist turnover ratio isn't great, basically. I think you can live more with a player like Trae Young getting 4.5 turnovers per game because he's getting almost 12 assists per game. Whereas John Morant this past season, 3.6 turnovers to 7.1 assists. The ratio isn't quite as good. He's been better than that in the past, but it was a little down this year. 7.1 was actually the second lowest assist per game. Excuse me, it was 7.3. 7.3 would tie the second lowest assists per game for him over the course of a regular season. I have Basketball Monster pulled up for the stats, and it always gets wonky during the playoffs and includes the playoff stats. So I'm now pulling up the regular season stats only, which John Morant averaged 3.7 turnovers to 7.3 assists. Still not a great ratio, just about the same. Also averaged 1.2 steals this year, 1.8 threes. 1.83 is a career high. I mean, he's showing more of a willingness to space the floor. He's seen that number kind of improve year to year. There's a lot to like from Ja's game, even if it's not perfect for 9-cat fantasy basketball. His free throw percentage did improve this year. He's up to 82, which is career high. Maybe that's something he can continue, but he also shot 44.9% from the floor, which was, hold on. Let me correct that. 45.5% from the floor, which was the second lowest mark of his career. I think Ja's kind of, I would say he's seen as an incredible high-level finisher, and he did have a season like that, but it hasn't been the norm for him throughout his career. He's been a slightly below average shooter. And then this year was one of his, and when I say shooter, I mean just general field goal percentage. And then he's still not a great shooter, as a 3-point shooter, like from distance. Not great there, but obviously still an incredible, talk about the assists are still good. Good rebounder for a guard because he's a freak athlete. can score at will. 22 or 23.2 points per game this season were lowest since year 2, which was kind of before he broke out in year 3, obviously. And then getting over a steal per game, that's nice. That's helpful. Just kind of above average, but there's a lot of guards that get that. So Ja's going to continue to be Ja. I think the main thing we need from him is just him to be healthier. 50 games this year just isn't a lot. 9 the year before, obviously, other reasons for that because 25 game suspension to start the year and the season-ending injury after playing just 9 games. But I think we can get a 65 game season of Ja Morant consistently. Just make him award eligible just because he's healthy enough, and that would work. That would be great because you can build a team in a category league and play into his strengths and weaknesses. I think he can hold a lot of value. Obviously, much better in points leagues. But if you're punting field goal percentage and turnovers, I think that he can hold value. Hold more value than what it may look like just looking at his 9 cat numbers, which is just barely inside the top 100 this season. I think there's been some, maybe it's just, I don't even want to call them rumors, just maybe fans speculating that Ja could be traded or paired with Zion, whether that's in, probably not in Memphis, but it could be in New Orleans. No idea if there's any truth to that. But it could be interesting to see if Ja is a player that could be available for a trade. I don't think that he should be. I think he's too talented and that this team has too much, like, unfinished business is a weird way to say it, but this team hasn't had their chance the past 2 seasons to like really try and see how good this team can be. So I wouldn't be looking to break this team up, but it will be interesting to see if that comes up. Now, the player who's probably the most valuable in category leagues is Jaren Jackson Jr., who averaged 22.2 points, 5.6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.2 steals, 1.5 blocks, and 2 threes per game. Now, his weakness is obviously, well, we'll say 2 weaknesses. The rebounding, just not great for a big. For a player who is 6'10", 5.6 rebounds is not good. But it's kind of been the norm for him. Last season, 5.5. Year before that, 6.8, which was a career high. And before that, 5.8, 5.6, 4. So he's just not a great rebounder. It's part of the reason that you draft a player like Zach Edey is because, okay, now you have another shot blocker down there in the paint, but also a guy that can just kind of dominate the glass when he was given the chance. Because I mean, we'll talk more about what Zach Edey can be, but I mean, Desmond Bane averaged more rebounds per game than Jaren Jackson, but it's just his game. And the other weakness I would say is just getting in foul trouble, which you kind of have to take the good with the bad because he's aggressive trying to block shots. He just gets into foul trouble, which keeps him off the floor, which in turn can't produce stats. Played 29.8 minutes per game this season, and foul trouble is definitely a factor with him not playing more. It stings. I would hope or would think that a player of his caliber defensively and his reputation defensively would get more of a benefit of the doubt with the whistle, the way some other players who are perceived as elite defenders get. Feels like once you, I don't know, get that reputation, then you're allowed to foul more, but I don't think that's really happened with Jaren Jackson. I mean, not to, I don't know, I don't really like making comparisons like this, but I'm going to do it. The way that like a guy like a Draymond Green gets away with a lot of things, I don't think Jaren Jackson gets the benefit of the doubt. And I'm not saying, but Jaren Jackson's a better defender than Draymond Green all time. Like, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's even a fair comparison at this point of Jaren Jackson's career. because Draymond Green's going to be a Hall of Famer, mostly because of his defense. But Draymond does get away with a lot. But Draymond gets away with a lot as far as other things outside of just like fouling on defense. But he gets kind of a little bit more leeway, I guess. And there's other defenders like that. It's not just Draymond. I think that's just like the number one example that people would point to. Will that ever happen for Jaren Jackson? I don't know. I don't foresee him becoming a really just dominant rebounder or really improving on that mark. Would love to see him get back up to over 2 blocks per game. Didn't happen this past year, but seeing him continue to grow on offense has been fun. And I think he's just going to continue to be what he is. He'll be 26 at the start of next season. Still young, but kind of getting more towards the prime of his career. Going to continue to hold a lot of value in dynasty leagues. Does kind of need to be, I guess, catered to when you're building out your team, just simply for the fact that he contributes in a number of different ways, but the rebounding is bad for a forward. So do you lean into a punt rebounds build? You definitely can and have this guy playing in your center spot. Or do you make up for it by getting other dominant rebounders? However you want to play it, holds a lot of value. The other player in this big three, I don't know. I feel like when a team has like a trio that they build around I tend to just call them a big three, but we'll just call them their star trio because big three almost feels like more of like a coined term specifically for the Heat, or you could say other big threes. But to me, I think of the Miami Heat with LeBron, D-Wade, Bosh, but their star trio in Memphis. The other piece of that is Desmond Bane, who averaged 19.2 points, 6.1 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.2 steals, and 2.4 threes per game this season. Has continued to be a third round value level producer the last few seasons. 4 years in a row providing late third round value. Now, obviously, he was also healthier this year than he was the year before, which was great. But also, this is the epitome of consistency, is what Desmond Bane has done. And the numbers haven't been, I guess, just the same the whole time. Like, he's grown his game and gotten better in other areas. Like, his points went down this year, as did his threes, but his rebounds went up. He was better at the free throw line. Field goal percentage went up a tad. The assists stayed over 5 per game. But if you go back to his first season where he was pretty valuable in fantasy when he finished and provided third round value for the first time, he was only averaging 18.2 points, 4.4 rebounds, 2.7 assists. But the turnovers were way lower. He's only at 1.5. The free throw percentage was over 93 threes per game. So his game hasn't specifically been consistent, but the level or caliber of production has been consistent. I don't really expect that to change. Him providing around third round value in 9-cap leagues, his strengths being the points, the threes, the decent assists, getting you a steal, and then this past year was a good rebounder for a guard, and then the elite free throw percentage. Pretty solid everywhere. Doesn't have a major weakness, like a glaring weakness, but doesn't fully completely dominate a category. His threes were more at a top tier level prior to this season, but they dipped down a little bit. I'm expecting him to continue to be very good, and he's still pretty young. He came in as an older rookie when he was drafted, but he's still young. All right, so what else do we have in Memphis? We have a lot. Zach Edey is the guy they drafted in the first round this year. Averaged 9.2 points, 8.3 rebounds, 1 assist. He also averaged 1.3 blocks per game, played 21.5 minutes per game. It was a very strange, not even strange, I think inconsistent way of using him. And the reports are that's part of the reason Taylor Jenkins got fired. I think the reports were that Ja Morant anticipated using or playing a lot more pick and roll with Zach Edey, and Taylor Jenkins didn't really do that. Don't remember who it was, what the name of the coach was, but they had brought in like a different assistant to install a different offense. And that was very different from what John Morant was expecting the team to play like, and he didn't agree with it, and I think that's part of the reason that they moved on. So we'll see. Maybe things will be a little bit different. Maybe Zach Edey will be used a little bit more consistently next season. Maybe that bodes well for Ja as well. Maybe he having Zach Edey to run pick and rolls with, that works out for Ja. I struggle with how to, I guess, approach Zach Edey in fantasy. Let's look at the postseason. So he had 14 and 17 when they lost to the Warriors, and then 15 and 11 when they beat Dallas. Didn't do too much scoring or rebounding in the OKC series. He did have 7 blocks in that last game. He's 7'4", 300 pounds. Strong player, tall player. Not too many other players in the league that can match his height. And I don't think that Boban maybe can match his height and weight. Maybe like Steven Adams but he's still small. Steven Adams is still a couple inches shorter. In theory, Zach Edey should be able to, score, not at will, but like score well in the paint. I think he was able to showcase that at times. And sitting down in the paint can block shots. And these things work well for fantasy. He's going to shoot a high percentage, rebound the ball, block shots. Traditional center stuff. Occasionally would step out and hit a 3, but he has touch for a player of his size, but you probably prefer him in the paint, just placing the ball in the rim, having Ja there to open things up. That works well. We'll see how they use him next season. I think it's very difficult to project, I think, because I think you see a lot of different mixed opinions on what type of player he can be next year. Just like looking at some of his games in April as well, like they're fighting for playoff positioning. 10 and 16 with 4 blocks, 8-13, 6-21, 17-19, 8-16. So like he had some games where he was truly dominating the glass. So I think he's gonna hold value in redraft leagues next year, especially if they make more of a commitment to him as the starting center. But I think sometimes you run into issues of you get into a postseason series and how does he match up? How can he get just totally played off the floor? OKC, he got into foul trouble at times. Like he fouled out in the last game that they lost, had 5 fouls in the game before that. Like if you're running into a team like OKC where they don't, like they can run Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. He's not a super floor spacer, but he's got enough skill to space the floor somewhat to the point where you could put Zach Edey in situations where he's not as strong defensively. Put him in pick and rolls, ISOs guarding superstars in the perimeter. That doesn't work super well in the postseason. And sure, he can improve on these things, but we're talking specifically for fantasy in the regular season. I don't think that's as much of an issue, but it's also kind of depends on how much Memphis wants to rely on something that may not work quite as well in the playoffs. All that being said, I think Zach Edey is going to have a good season next year and will continue to be a productive player. I don't think he's going to be a 20 and 12 guy with 2.5 to 3 blocks, but I think he can be like a 12 and 10 with a block and a half to 2 block. Like I think that's realistic. High field goal percentage, like something that plays well from a traditional center skill set. Plays well, but I don't see a super, super high dominant ceiling. All right. The other guys that we have in Memphis, um, we still have. So I guess here's an important one to highlight is Scottie Pippen Jr., who was kind of fantastic all season. Played well when he was given the chance to start when John Morant was out, but for some reason that wasn't what they always went to. Sometimes he just came off the bench and played a significant role. But last two games of that series against OKC, the game that Ja got hurt, he had 28, 5, 5, 3, 1 with 6 threes. The game that and he did start this whole series as well. But having Ja out there or not out there gives him the ball in his hands more. Last game with Ja out, 30, 11, and 4 with 2 threes. I think Scottie Pippen he'll be 24 years old, just turned 25 shortly after next season starts, has a lot of value. I think, assuming he is, there's no reason for them to move on from him. He's under contract for 2 more years and then a team option for a third year. Like, they can keep him around in a very, very team friendly deal to be a sixth man behind Ja Morant. And it's a great safety valve for when Morant, who has had a lot of injury issues throughout his career, partially because he's just this super explosive athlete that's consistently up in the air. That's injuries tend to happen. So having Scottie Pippen behind him is a great strategy. I think it does cap his fantasy value. I think you probably see this is like Tyus Jones 2.0, where Tyus Jones was this super streamer whenever John Morant was out, and you could almost count on him for a pretty efficient double-double. But then when John Morant was available, Tyus Jones was kind of inconsistent, but like a solid producer. I think that's kind of what we are going to see from Scottie Pippen Jr. moving forward, which is okay. But man, did he had some really good games this past season, specifically seeing him play as well as he did in playoffs. That was encouraging for his long-term value. I think eventually he'll probably be looking to get his own starting job, but Memphis is kind of in control there for a couple more years. So unless it's a situation where a team's like, yeah, we'll trade you our star, we need someone else's contract to match, but we also really want you to include Scottie Pippen Jr. and it won't really change the money much. Don't know how much Memphis would be interested in something like that, but that's probably the only possibility for him to move on from Memphis because he's just too valuable and on too team friendly of a deal. That does cap his value in 9-cat leagues, but the talent there still very impressive. For the sake of time, we're not going to go highlight everybody's numbers, but we will kind of quickly breeze through some of these guys. Jalen Wells averaged 10.4 points, 3.4 rebounds, 1.7 assists per game as a second-round pick. Was incredibly impressive as a rookie, and I think it kind of complicates things for a guy like Vince Williams Jr., who, while everybody else was injured, he played well, and then he gets hurt while everybody else is playing well, and now there's this new player here in Jalen Wells, who's a couple of years younger, former second-round pick from this past season. That's now it's like, Jalen Wells is the starter. If he doesn't suffer that kind of gruesome injury on that hard fall late in the year, he's starting in the playoffs for them, not Scottie Pippen Jr. He's a guy that they value highly, and it was just bad timing for Vince Williams. So is he still part of the rotation next year? Probably. Unless he is traded, because I think that Vince Williams Jr., I value him higher than I do Jalen Wells. And I think that's from a fantasy perspective and a real life one. I like him more. But if Memphis doesn't feel that way, that doesn't really matter. So we'll, I guess, be keeping an eye out to see how they feel. But based on this past season, it really seems like, at least in the moment, Jalen Wells was valued higher. And I think the same kind of goes for Gigi Jackson, who only played 29 games. Vince Williams played 27 games. Those injuries kind of threw those guys off. Still super young. Gigi Jackson's still 20 and was like the top prospect in I guess he would have been projected to go number 1 overall in this past draft, but then reclassed this was when he was in high school, so who knows how things would have played out had he just stayed in his class. But reclassed, went to South Carolina at 17 years old, slipped in the draft to Memphis because a 17-year-old on a bad college team, yeah, it didn't go well. Part of that, and I think he's even talked about it, is like almost like a maturity thing, but you're a 17 or 18-year-old who's been praised as the best basketball player in your age, and you go into a bad college team and it doesn't work out. Lucky for Memphis. Good for them. Definitely still holds a lot of value. Hopefully can be a larger part of the rotation next year. They also still have guys that are just still valuable. Like Santi Aldama is really, really good. Feels like we can't even, I mean, we could take the extra time to really hit on him, but I'll mention 12 and a half points, 6.4 rebounds, 2.9 assists, just under a steal, 1.8 threes. Really solid reserve. Has had some solid stretches in the starting lineup. Wouldn't be shocking if he were offered such a big deal from another team that Memphis didn't match, but I think the intention would be to bring him back because he is a really good player. Who is probably like he's a player that's worth rostering in like a standard redraft league and definitely worth rostering in Dynasty, but his value is always gonna be a little capped by being a reserve. But he was really productive while still in that role at times this year. Luke Kennard going to hit threes. Brandon Clark is a nice reserve, big for them. Injuries have kind of limited him, kind of derailed his career. He's looking really good early on, but it was good to see him play 64 games this past season. Jay Huff had a nice stretch where it was like, oh, like having him as a stretch five, that's nice. Another depth piece for them. It's probably all the guys. I mean, there's other players there that holds some level of value to the team, but as far as the guys that we're really concerned about in dynasty leagues, outside of like the very deep dart throws, that's it for Memphis. We'll see what they do this summer. I think it's the team that has the opportunity to make a lot of moves, but I'm not super confident that they will, and they may be confident they don't need to. So we'll see how that plays out for them. But that's going to do it for this episode. You can like, comment, subscribe. If you, whether you agree or disagree, would be helpful. Would appreciate that. You can follow me on Twitter at NoRuben22. Same thing on Blue Sky. And I will see you guys next week.